Former Southwest coordinator of the UK Department for International Development, now a presidential aspirant, Shinoff Agbero joins us now to discuss the issues. President Trump has blamed the imbalances on trade on Europe, which has called him out on the protectionism. So is this protectionism what the U.S. is doing with Europe, Canada and Mexico, and is it beneficial to a country like the United States?
Well, you see, quite frankly, it's actually Trump living up to his election promises. One of the first things he said he was going to do was to ensure that he's going to renegotiate all trade deals America has with everybody in a manner that is principally in America's, U.S.'s enlightened self-interest. So he comes from the America First school of thought. And what he's done is that he's tied that up to employment in the U.S. because trade, the aftermath of trade, of a country's trade policy, determines the kind of employment you use it for your local economics. And if you consider the statistics right now, the U.S. probably has the lowest unemployment rate it's had in 10 years. Yeah. And it's the consistency of a Trump promise. Well, what are the full implications of that? Of course, there's going to be responses. I mean, what he's done essentially is that he's raised the taxes for steel into the U.S. by about 25% and that of aluminium by 10%. And all that has its repercussions in the European market, which simply means that European products are going to be highly priced, you know, and probably put U.S. products in, you know, a better state of competition. Also reduces dependence on the European products. Essentially, it's focused on what the U.S. thinks it's good for it. But essentially, he's targeting employment. He wants American steel factories, aluminum factories to get to work.
Well, then you're saying that it is more beneficial for the United States.
From their perspective,
but
it is.
What about the retaliations?
That is where the issues
by
are.
Europe and Mexico, I think, retaliated almost immediately.
Yes. Well, you see, let's put it this way. The effect of the immediate retaliation is not even what I worry about. Because, for example, you have a 0.05% impact that is being anticipated on growth in the immediate market. But you see, it's a snowball effect. One retaliation will have to lead to something else, And a lot of people have predicted that it's going to stall both growth in the Europe and global growth by about 5%. You know, if it goes to that extreme, if it explodes. Because what you're having now is a tariff war, imagine, where people are going to use tariff as an economic tool to sort of determine certain advantages in their domestic economies.
Will that distort international trade?
Well, to an extent, yes, that's what we're saying. It will distort international trade. And I think the question you asked there is that who does international trade benefit currently? So everybody is looking for a space in the global market. And everybody is looking to dominate, particularly China, USA. Now, look at what, within the North American, you have the NAFTA, which is the agreement that brings Canada and Mexico together, you know, on trade. But even he said, before he got elected, that he was going to review NAFTA. So, of course, they should have expected it, going by the records of Trump. Now, everything is going to boil down to you know, who is going to, when the elephants fight, who suffers? Because they are going to look for new markets. And they are not going to look for new markets that they don't eventually dominate and control. So even if it means something like producing steel or producing, you know, and it's an opportunity for countries like Nigeria and countries in Africa to sort of take advantage of this. And
how do we take advantage of that? Because we don't produce steel.
Okay, well,
and our
see,
manufacturing
if we haven't been flip-flopping with our Jaukuta for the past 25 years, we would have been in the best position to take advantage of that now, and it's never too late, you know, if you get the right government in. But you see, one thing we need to do is to understand what the World Trade Organization treaties say. You know, that's one thing. We have to understand these deals and these agreements and the impact You know, take for example lately, and you know, we listened to a program just now, which recounted Nigeria's rejection of the African trade. Yeah, you know,
Yes,
which
I
for
was going
me
to talk
is
about
it's
that.
probably the only thing I support about this, what this government has done. I absolutely support it because when you open the entire African space to free trade, and the Africans themselves are not in control of their space, then what are you doing? Then you're exposing us to those who, that's where they fall over of these trade wars. Because the next thing they're going to look for is they're going to look for a weak space in the global village and try to capture it. Then you have another scramble for Africa, which is precisely what you had in the 18th century, 17th century. When the trade conflicts in Europe had reached its height, they looked for new frontiers. And if you're not in charge of your own space, then you're going to be dinner on the table.
You're saying that we are disadvantaged now because we are not in the Continental Free Trade Agreement, which would have provided, you know, a better partnership with these countries, perhaps looking for new markets.
No.
Or we could have filled in.
Two things why we are
countries.
disadvantaged. We're disadvantaged because I'm not sure that we have a tight grip on the agreements we've entered into and the full repercussions, you know, the different dynamics. Second thing is that we are not producing.
Is this because of the kind of president the U.S. has right now, or this is generally speaking?
You mean that's happening to us?
No, I mean, you said when we don't have a full understanding
yes,
of the
we're
agreement.
seeing a president who has put his own national interest primarily ahead of any other thing. And this is the lesson that we too should learn. One of the issues I've discussed here before when we were discussing Brexit and what happened was, look, what is Nigeria's own national interest? Defined exclusive to Nigeria. That should be the basic issue in form our foreign policy, our trade policy, our diplomatic policy. Because everything you're driving is to achieve a specific goal in the interest of your country and in the interest of your citizens.
So in other words, you're saying that a president like Donald Trump
Yes.
is a good example for African leaders.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He's a great example for African leaders. And I think that they should look at him and with a bit more respect. I mean, initially, yes, probably because, you know, his own problem is that he just doesn't understand Africans. He doesn't understand black people because he's never really dealt with them, you know.
So how do we portray ourselves
that's his own mind.
him?
We don't need to portray ourselves to him. We need to have a defined national interest, which we stick to. We don't need to please anybody or everybody. We can't even, and we wouldn't even. And the more you try to make you to be good and sharp and better than them, you're not going to please them. It's not going to please them, but they will respect you. And then you will have control over, I mean, a bit more control over your own destiny.